Hi, I'm Sharon, and this is my garden. It's about 30 years old now, and I would classify myself as a perennial gardener. One of my passions is peonies, and I've been doing a collection of Arthur Percy Saunders peonies, and he grew up in Ottawa on the experimental farm, and his father was the director of the experimental farm, and he did a lot of hybridization of peonies and made a breakthrough in new colors and that. There's a big collection of peonies he developed at the experimental farm in Ottawa, and it has a special place for me because when I was young I grew up right across the street from the experimental farm, so I spent a lot of my childhood playing in there in the grounds and the gardens. One of the things that I've tried to do with the peonies is get a season that I could get about six weeks out of peonies in the garden with different varieties. I start with the species ones, which are the earliest one. My earliest one blooms about Mother's Day, and I can probably have peonies in the garden till the end of June by just using different varieties. So one of my favorite Saunders peonies is called Garden Peace, and it opens with a pink bud and it has red stems, and then the flower is white. And I have about 30 peonies in the garden now. I've gone on garden trips probably for 20 years with 3 other friends, and that has been a big influence on my gardening style. We mostly have gone to Britain, and one time we were in France, but we've been to stately home gardens with the National Trust and to private gardens too. And you can learn something from every garden that you visit. One influence for me personally is the arts and crafts movement in Britain, which promoted harmony with design with the house and the garden, and it was from the house you kind of brought the garden inside. And the lot here that I garden is quite it's a pied lot, but not very deep. So I've changed the orientation of my garden to go across the lot, and then I can get borrowed views into my neighbor's trees and that, so it gives me a much bigger visual impact on the garden. And one of the things with the arts and crafts gardens, they had garden rooms. I don't really have that, but because of the way the garden flows around the house, I can do a different color scheme on one side of it, so it looks individual from some of the other parts of the garden. I think the other thing from the garden tours that I took was learning how to extend the season here. And so I've tried to do that in my own garden. I try and have a lot of spring flowers in the garden so that I can see them from the window. And the garden starts off with quite a few irises, like the bearded irises from the dwarfs and going up to the border iris. So I have probably 6 weeks of season with the iris too, and then I go into the Siberian iris. And they were developed over the last 20 years, and they have a breakthrough in colors from very intense yellows, purples into the reds and that. So I've been trying to add those to the garden over the years. And then moving through the garden season, I've tried to extend into the fall. And one garden we visited on our first garden trip had an amazing fall garden in October. This is in Britain, and it's Alan Bloom's garden, who was a nurseryman. And the beds were just lovely at that time of year, and we can adapt that to Saskatchewan climate too. So I've tried to put in or asters, helianthus, sedums, and grasses to extend the fall season. When I started perennial garden, I had this big yard to fill, and I got into growing perennials from seeds. I would grow probably about 25 different varieties a year, and it was good in that I would get quite a few plants, and I could plant them around the garden to see where they thrived or maybe where they didn't. And I got a lot of the seed from seed exchanges or buying seeds, or from friends too. And my garden now is I do rely on seeds for not so much the perennials, maybe the short-lived ones, but biennials and annuals, which I think you need in a perennial garden to kind of fill in the moments when the perennial garden is quieter. One of the ones that do really well here are lupines, a biennial, and I just let a few of them self-seed every year. Also, I have forget-me-nots, another biennial that I like in the spring. I grow them with primroses in the early spring, the yellow primroses. So it just gives me a feeling of maybe almost a British spring. Anyway, that's kind of what my garden's been based on, and I've tried many plants of many different varieties, and you can usually find something that maybe one won't survive, but you can find another one. And I think with comparing how we garden in Saskatchewan to British gardens too, you may not be able to grow the same plant, but you can find something that is similar and will have the same effect in the garden. Thank you for visiting the garden. I'm happy to see a lot of young gardeners coming along now too. I know my son's friends are starting their own gardens, and one thing about gardeners I think you'll find are generous, and they're willing to share their plants and kind of inspire the next generation to garden.